The butter you're spreading on your toast every morning might look the same as it always has, but the quality inside that wrapper has quietly changed. And 7 of the most popular brands in America are now giving you a product padded with extra water, sourced from industrial dairy operations with no grass-fed standards, and missing the specific nutrients your heart, your bones, and your brain need more of as you get older. Nutrients like omega-3 fatty acids that protect your cardiovascular system, vitamin K2 that helps direct calcium into your bones instead of letting it build up in your arteries, and CLA, a beneficial fat that grass-fed cows produce at up to 5 times the level of grain-fed cows. I'm going to walk you through 7 butter brands that have either been quietly cheapened, sourced from places you wouldn't expect, or marketed in ways that give you a false sense of what you're getting. And then I'm going to give you 3 brands that are genuinely better for your body, available at stores you already shop at, and priced close enough that making the switch won't strain your grocery budget. Butter used to be a very simple product. For most of American history, cows ate grass, farmers churned cream into butter, and what you bought at the store was a direct reflection of what those cows were eating and how they were living. But as the dairy industry consolidated over the last 40 or 50 years, the big co-ops and multinational corporations realized they could keep the price down and the margins up by feeding cows mostly grain in confined indoor operations. And the butter that comes from grain-fed cows looks different, tastes different, and has a different nutritional profile than butter from cows that spend their lives eating fresh grass. A peer-reviewed study in the Journal of Dairy Science confirmed that grass-fed butter contains significantly more CLA, which stands for conjugated linoleic acid, and is a beneficial fat that supports your metabolism, more omega-3 fatty acids, more beta-carotene, which is the antioxidant that gives grass-fed butter its deep golden color, and more vitamin K2, which is the specific form of vitamin K that helps keep calcium in your bones and out of the lining of your blood vessels. And that matters enormously as you get older because arterial calcification, which is just a fancy way of saying calcium building up inside the walls of your arteries and making them stiff, is one of the major risk factors for heart disease in people over 55. The American butter standard only requires 80% butter fat, which means up to 20% of what's in your stick of butter can legally be water. And several of the brands I'm about to show you appear to be sitting right at that legal floor, which is why so many people have noticed their baked goods going flat and their butter separating into a greasy puddle at room temperature. The product looks the same on the outside, the name on the wrapper hasn't changed, but what's inside the wrapper has. Land O'Lakes is the top-selling butter brand in America with over $19 billion in annual sales, and it's the one most people grab without thinking because it's been on the shelf their entire lives. The stick butter is real butter, cream and salt, and I want to be honest about that. But Land O'Lakes sources from a massive cooperative of conventional dairy farms with no grass-fed requirement, no organic certification. What that means for you is that this butter is nutritionally closer to vegetable shortening in its fat profile than it is to what butter was 50 years ago, because the omega-3s, the CLA, the beta-carotene, and the vitamin K2 that come from a grass-based diet are largely absent when the cows are eating grain in confined conditions. On top of that, undercover investigations spanning 14 Land O'Lakes supplier farms documented routine violations of the company's own stated animal welfare policies. And here's the thing that's been making the rounds across baking communities online over the last year. A flood of consumer complaints on Reddit, Facebook, and Threads reporting that Land O'Lakes butter has become watery and oily, producing flat cookies, greasy dough, and buttercream frosting that won't hold its shape. One user on Threads wrote, "Do not buy Land O'Lakes butter. They are watering it down. When you use it in baking, it is like baking with lard." Since the law only requires 80% butter fat, nothing is stopping any brand from filling the other 20% with water and calling it butter. And the consumer complaint suggests that's exactly what's happening. Challenge is real butter sourced from California Dairies, Inc., a cooperative of nearly 300 farms concentrated in California's Central Valley, which is one of the most heavily industrialized dairy regions in the country. A food scientist who goes by at Handle the Heat on social media ran a browning test that went viral, where she weighed multiple butter brands before and after browning them to approximate how much water each one contained. and Challenge lost the most weight of any brand tested, meaning it had the highest water content in the entire lineup. Multiple baking groups on Facebook have documented the same experience. Oily separation at room temperature, inconsistent results from batch to batch, and baked goods that come out greasier than expected. And there's one detail about Challenge that I think most people don't know. Danish Creamery, which is marketed as a separate premium brand with fancier packaging and a higher price tag, is actually a wholly owned subsidiary of Challenge Dairy Products. Same cooperative, the same Central Valley supply chain, different label, higher price. If you've been buying Danish Creamery thinking you were upgrading, you are paying more for the same source. Great value butter is real butter, USD, AAA, graded cream and salt. And I don't want to overstate the case against it because at its best, it's a perfectly serviceable product. The problem is consistency. Walmart doesn't operate its own creamery. It sources from whichever supplier offers the lowest price at any given time, which means the butter in your box this week may come from a completely different dairy operation than what you bought last month. Multiple consumer threads report exactly what you'd expect from that kind of rotating supply chain. Some batches are fine, others have an off smell or an oddly pale color that suggests lower quality cream. One consumer in a baking group reported that her great value butter, which she'd always bought as grade AA, appeared to have been quietly downgraded to grade A, which scores lower on the USDA's own aroma, flavor, and texture evaluations. There's no grass-fed sourcing, no organic option, and no way to trace which farm or creamery produced the butter sitting in your fridge right now. You're buying commodity butter from an anonymous source, and the quality depends entirely on which batch you happen to get. Costco's regular Kirkland butter, the conventional sticks, generated a wave of baking complaints across Reddit and Facebook in late 2024 and into 2025. A Reddit post titled "Kirkland Butter Ruined Some Recipes" went viral, with baker after baker reporting flat cookies, greasy dough, and broken buttercream, all of which are signs of excess water content in the butter. The standard Kirkland butter is conventional, not grass-fed, sourced from industrial dairy operations with no transparency about which farms supply the cream. Now here's the thing I want to make sure you understand. Costco does sell a separate Kirkland grass-fed butter, which is made by a New Zealand company called Westland Milk Products, and that is a genuinely different product with a different nutritional profile. But both products sit side by side in the dairy case under the same Kirkland signature name, and a lot of people grab the cheaper conventional option without realizing they're getting something drastically different from the grass-fed version right next to it. Same brand name, same store, very different butter. Horizon is the butter that seniors reach for when they want to do the right thing, because it says organic and pasture-raised right there on the label, and they pay a premium trusting those words. But Horizon is owned by Danone, the French multinational that also controls Evian water and Activia yogurt, and the sourcing reality behind those labels has not matched what most people would expect. Beyond pesticides documented Danone importing conventional calves into organic herds, which is a direct violation of organic transition standards. The Cornucopia Institute and the Northeast Organic Farming Association published investigations showing Danone dropped authentic small family dairy farms in the Northeast and shifted sourcing to industrial-scale operations in Texas. And in 2023, PETA released a whistleblower report documenting extreme animal suffering at a Texas farm supplying Horizon, leading Danone to suspend that supplier. On the taste side, the tasting table panel that tested 12 butter brands described Horizon's flavor as reminiscent of olive oil, with a bitterness uncommon in real butter, and while they actually ranked it fairly well for uniqueness, that off flavor is not what most people are looking for when they spread butter on their morning toast. The organic label is doing heavy lifting for a brand whose actual supply chain has faced repeated credibility challenges. Lucerne is the store brand at Safeway and Albertsons, and it's the cheapest stick on the shelf at those stores, which is why a lot of people on a budget reach for it without giving it much thought. It is real butter, and I'll give it that. But in Tasting Table's blind taste test of 12 grocery store butter brands, Lucerne came in dead last, 12th out of 12. The tasters described a bizarre aftertaste that reminded them of Sweetheart's candy, with a citric acid tingle and chalky notes that had nothing to do with how butter is supposed to taste. Like Great Value, it's a private label product with no disclosure about where the cream comes from, no grass-fed sourcing, no organic certification, and no farm traceability of any kind. The tasting table reviewers noted that Lucerne would probably be fine if you buried it in a recipe with other strong flavors, but as a spread on bread, which is how most people use butter every day, it was the weakest tasting product they tested. For a product you put in your body every single morning, finishing last in every taste test it enters is not where you want to be. Tillamook markets itself as extra creamy and premium, and the Oregon Co-op branding, the Green Hills, the farmhouse imagery gives the whole thing a wholesome, pasture-fresh feel that makes you want to trust it. But Tillamook butter is not grass-fed, not organic, and only 81% butter fat, which is barely 1 percentage point above the legal minimum and well below the 82 to 84% range you'll find in European-style and grass-fed butters. The unsalted version contains natural flavors, which in the butter industry typically refers to starter distillate, a compound used to simulate the tangy, cultured flavor that traditionally comes from actual fermentation. Because the cows are grain-fed, the butter is nutritionally in the same category as Land O'Lakes or Challenge when it comes to the CLA, omega-3, and vitamin K2 content that actually makes a difference for your heart and your bones. And that same tasting table panel detected a faint hint of the Sweethearts-like sour aftertaste in Tillamook that they'd found in the Lucerne. Seniors pay $5 to $6 for Tillamook thinking they're getting something meaningfully better than a $3 store brand, and the truth is, the branding outperforms the butter. Now here's the part where this gets easy, because you don't have to churn your own butter or order anything from a specialty farm. The 3 brands I'm about to walk you through are sold at Walmart, Kroger, Target, Safeway, Whole Foods, and most major grocery chains. They cost roughly $5 to $7 for an 8-ounce package, and every one of them is made from the milk of grass-fed, pasture-raised cows, which means you get the omega-3s, the CLA, the beta-carotene, and the vitamin K2 that your body is looking for at this point in your life. This is just a swap. Same grocery trip, different butter. If you want the single best butter you can buy at a regular grocery store, Kerrygold is the one. And at this point, the evidence behind it is so consistent across so many independent tests that it's hard to argue otherwise. 2 ingredients: pasteurized cream from grass-fed cows and salt. That's it. Irish dairy cows graze outdoors on grass for roughly 300 days per year, and that grass diet is what produces the deep golden color. You'll notice the second you unwrap it, because the beta-carotene in the grass passes directly into the milk and then into the butter. Kerrygold ranked number 1 in Tasting Table's 12-brand taste test, number 1 on Wirecutter's 2026 butter review, number 1 on Chowhound's grocery store butter ranking, and consistently near the top across Southern Living, Serious Eats, and multiple other independent panels. There's no RBST, no antibiotics, no natural flavors, no annatto dye for color, nothing artificial at all. You can find it at Walmart for $5.24 for the 8-ounce sticks, and it's also available at Costco in a 4-pack, and at Kroger, Target, Safeway, and virtually every major grocery chain in the country. The one honest thing I'll mention is that the American version of Kerrygold is made to US standards, so it's 80% butter fat rather than the higher European standard. But in every blind taste test, it still outperforms butter with higher butterfat numbers, which tells you how much the quality of the cream matters beyond just the fat percentage. If you want to buy American and still get the benefits of pasture-raised butter, Vital Farms is the brand I'd point you to. 2 ingredients: pasteurized cream from milk and salt. The cream comes from cows on small U.S. family farms that spend an average of 200 days per year on open pasture with a 90% grass-fed diet, and the butter is 85% butterfat, which is 5 full percentage points above the U.S. minimum and higher than most European butters. That higher fat content means less water, which means better performance in baking, richer flavor on bread, and a denser concentration of the fat-soluble vitamins your body absorbs from butter. The color is a deep golden orange, just like Kerrygold, because the beta-carotene from the pasture diet comes through in the cream. No antibiotics, no growth hormones, no natural flavors, no artificial anything. It's the same transparency and traceability model as their trusted egg line, where you can trace the product back to specific farms. Available at Target for $4.39 for 8 ounces, and also at Kroger, Whole Foods, Sprouts, and Amazon. I'll be straightforward about the taste test results. In Tasting Table's salted butter ranking, Vital Farms landed in the middle of the pack at number 8, with reviewers noting the flavor was more earthy and savory than sweet. If you prefer a traditional sweet cream butter taste, Kerrygold is the better fit. But if you want the highest butterfat content and domestic sourcing from a brand with strong animal welfare standards, Vital Farms earns its spot. The third option is Organic Valley's cultured pasture butter, and I'm recommending it specifically for people who want the USDA organic seal on their butter without paying a premium that doesn't respect a fixed income. 3 ingredients: pasteurized organic sweet cream, salt, and microbial cultures. That last ingredient is what makes this a cultured butter, which means live bacteria are added to the cream before it's churned, the same process used to make yogurt, and those bacteria produce lactic acid that gives the butter a richer, slightly tangy European-style flavor. For seniors who experience mild discomfort with regular dairy, the culturing process partially breaks down the lactose, which can make it easier on your digestion. The butter fat is 84% above both the US and European minimums, and because it's USDA certified organic, you're getting cream from cows whose feed contains no synthetic pesticides, no antibiotics, no growth hormones, and no GMOs. The cows are certified pasture-raised on a cooperative of small family farms, the same Organic Valley Co-op that has been farmer-owned since 1988. Bon Appetit named it their favorite fancy supermarket butter, and the 84% butter fat gives it a richness that a lot of the conventional brands can't match. You can find it at Walmart for $4.64 for 8 ounces, and it's also at Kroger, Target, Safeway, and Whole Foods. The one caveat I want to mention is that this is a seasonal product churned only from May through September, when the cows are actively on pasture. So availability can be inconsistent at some stores, and if your store is out of it, the regular Organic Valley butter is available year-round, though it doesn't have the same cultured process or the same butter fat level. I should also note that in Tasting Table's salted butter ranking, Organic Valley's regular butter placed 11th out of 12, with reviewers finding it bland compared to the competition. So the regular version may not deliver the same experience as the cultured pasture butter I'm specifically recommending here. Here's your rule of thumb for the butter aisle. Look at the wrapper and ask 2 questions. Does it say grass-fed? And is the ingredient list cream and salt with nothing else hiding behind it? If the butter is pale yellow and the label doesn't mention grass-fed or pasture-raised anywhere, you're getting a conventional product with a fraction of the nutrients your body actually needs from butter at this stage of your life. The deep golden color of grass-fed butter isn't a marketing trick. It's the beta-carotene from real grass showing up in the cream, and that color tells you something meaningful about what's inside. Your body processes every pat of butter you eat, and the fats, the vitamins, and the nutrients in that butter are either supporting your heart and your bones or they're just filling space. And at our age, we don't have the luxury of settling for filler. If this was helpful, send it to your spouse, text it to the friend you always eat breakfast with, or share it with the neighbor who keeps asking why their cookies come out flat, because the people who care about you deserve the same information you just got. I'll see you in the next one.